Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another installment of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center's Leadership Institute Leadership Series. My name is Chris Boehm. I'm an instructor with the Leadership Institute. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or this is the first time you've seen one of our leadership series, what they basically are is the Leadership Institute brings in current and former leaders in government, primarily law enforcement, but they can come from a variety of different fields. We sit down and we have a conversation about leadership, a variety of topics, but we do try to focus on leadership. These are unscripted. These are really informal discussions. So we just have a good time and talk about current leadership topics, past topics, maybe emerging issues. It's my great pleasure today to welcome Tracy Perry, the Director of USDA Forest Service Law Enforcement and Investigation. Welcome and thank you, Tracy.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Tracy, just a little bit of background on Tracy. Tracy has been with the U.S. Forest Service for 33 years. One agency, I believe it was 1989. Tracy started out here in Georgia. Tracy started out early in his law enforcement career as a uniform officer for Forest Service. Spent some time in uniform, moved over to a criminal investigator series as a special agent. He spent a lot of time as a special agent, a variety of different duty locations. Well, not too many to list, but mostly here in the South on the East Coast. During that time, also spent multiple acting roles as ASAC, different formal leadership positions, and eventually made a move to a regional office in Atlanta as Assistant Special Agent in Charge. Spent quite a few years there. During that time, also details as SAC, Assistant Director, just a variety of leadership roles, a lot of special projects. In 2010, I believe it was, yes. He went up to the Washington office. He'd been there a couple times on a detail, but went up to the Washington office as the new Deputy Director of Forest Service Law Enforcement. In 2016, Tracy Perry was named the Director of Forest Service Law Enforcement. He's been a director almost 7 years.
Yes, it's amazing.
Quite a bit of time. For full disclosure here, some of you, I've done a couple of these before, but I am Chris Boehm. I'm retired from the Forest Service as well. Tracy was my boss. I was the deputy director. He actually moved me up to DC in 2012.
Indeed,
so I've got a little bit of inside information on him. He's got some on me too.
Yes,
so
indeed. Yes,
I
indeed.
think we kind of agreed not to share any embarrassing stories or anything. So we're
fair enough.
Yeah. So. Tracy, tell me a little bit more about yourself and anything I missed on your bio, please.
Oh, no, you hit my bio great, Chris. Thanks. Born and raised in Georgia. Started on the Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest as a patrol officer, worked there for a little over 3 years, and then went to the George Washington National Forest as an agent, worked up there for about 5 years, and then went to the Daniel Boone as an agent, worked there for a couple of years before going to Atlanta as the Assistant Special Agent in Charge. And like you said, from there, I worked in Atlanta for 10 years, technically as the ASAC, but I also spent time as acting SAC, as Assistant Director for Training, Development, and Standards here at FLETC for a while. Some time as Assistant Director for Administration and Systems in DC, and like you said, a number of special projects and details. So fortunate enough to get the Deputy Director job in 2010, like you said, and then went from there. Luckily, was fortunate enough to be selected for Director in 2016. And Chris and I, he didn't tell you, but I convinced him. I had hired him when I was the deputy as the assistant director for investigations. And so when I became director, it was great to get an opportunity to bring him up as deputy director because we worked so well together. So it's great to be working with you again.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Great. Good time, great experience for me as well. So first kind of question, a little bit discussionary. Tell me about your leadership journey. Obviously not just with the Forest Service.
Yeah.
We lead at work and outside of work.
Right.
And maybe opportunities you growing up or in different areas. How did it all start for you, or why did you get into law enforcement? I guess if you can, maybe address that a little bit as well.
Interesting. Law enforcement. I actually kind of grew up in a law enforcement family, mostly corrections. My father retired as a deputy warden here in the state of Georgia. My brother retired as a warden here in the state of Georgia. And I have numerous uncles and cousins that have worked in either as troopers or worked as in corrections as well. So law enforcement was always a part of my family growing up, and it's something that I always considered. But I always thought, starting out that I was going to be working probably in CSI or something like that. I went to college. I was a chemistry major, really liked it. And then I started looking at forensic science as a major. And with that route, got my bachelor's degree in forensic science. And I was looking at doing an internship. And I realized after I started doing that I really wasn't as interested in actually doing the lab work. I was more interested in the investigative part of it. So that had me looking at things like FBI, DEA, other federal law enforcement agencies. And as I was thinking about that, my mom worked for the Forest Service in a totally different capacity. She worked in the administrative side of the organization in the timber shop. And she said to me one day, she goes, well, if you're interested in federal law enforcement, why don't you come down to the office and talk to our special agent? And I'm like, special agents? The Forest Service doesn't have special agents. What are you talking about? And she's like, of course we do. She said, my friend Les Burrow is the special agent here on the Chattahoochee Oconee. Why don't you come down and talk to him about it? I'm like, sure. And so I went down and talked to Les, and he took me out on a ride along. And I had no idea of the things that went on in the National Forest at that time. It was
Still do.
Still do. Yeah, still do. Absolutely. We went out, actually, it was doing marijuana eradication. There were these giant, large marijuana plants growing on the forest, and they were eradicating from the forest. Country boys sheltered had no idea that marijuana grew on the national forest like that. And we ended up getting a situation where the growers decided to come in on the backside of the grow and try to harvest some of it while we were out doing eradication. Ended up getting in a little bit of a car chase, and I'm like, hey, sign me up. This sounds like something I'd be interested in doing. And so fortunate enough from there, Les offered me an opportunity to do a cooperative law enforcement job. So basically, once I graduated from undergraduate school, I started going to graduate school, but I also would work a period with the Forest Service, and go back to school, work a period, and go back to school. And back then, one of those work periods, I actually got to come to, at the time, it was 9PT, is our basic police training class, and came down. And so after I finished 9PT, when I come back from my work periods, then I could go out and patrol in the forest with the LEO. So got some experience before I actually came on permanently, full time, and it was a great experience. So that's kind of how I got in, and never considered leaving. It's been a great career, like you said, almost 34 years now, and it's been great.
And let me throw another question your way before we get into some specific leadership stuff. Okay. I didn't ask, obviously I know what Forest Service law enforcement does, but for those of you out there who are not familiar with Forest Service law enforcement, you want to just give us a brief example or
Sure.
just kind of an overview?
Sure. So the Forest Service, we have 193 million acres of National Forest System lands spread out across about 44 states. And we only have about 600 officers and agents to manage that vast thing. So very varied, lots of different crimes occur on national forest lands. We have a uniform component that's responsible, essentially like being a city police officers in the forest. Everything that you would find in the city, you find out there, everything from DUIs to assaults in the campground to misdemeanor violations, related to people crimes. But we also focus on natural resource protection. So very, very big focus on natural resources, and we work a lot with our state game wardens and other natural resource protection agencies as well. And then on the investigative side, we do everything from the misdemeanors all the way up to the serious felony violations. A lot of marijuana is grown on national forest lands illegally. We do a lot of serious felony investigations related to that. There's all kinds of outfitter guide cases that we do. One big high-profile thing that we do a lot of is arson and wildfire investigations, both arson and non-human caused. Have some of the best wildland fire investigators in the world who are responsible for, determining the cause and origin of those fires. Spend a lot of time and effort doing that and training to be good at that. So basically anything you name, very good at fugitive hunts. We work a lot with the U.S. Marshal Service, FBI, DEA, and others on large cases like that. So we have 9 regions within our Forest Service. Each region has a special agent in charge, and each special agent in charge is responsible for supervising an investigative component, which has an assistant special agent in charge and a number of agents. And then on the other side, you have patrol commanders who supervise the uniform components in those same regions. And so regions vary from large to small. Our Region 5, which is California, is our largest region. They're about 150 officers and agents when fully staffed. And then we have, as small as Alaska, we have about 25 folks up there who manage a much larger, vast area of land. But a lot of the times the staffing is based upon a variety of factors to include, proximity to population centers. So like California, obviously a lot of people live in California. It requires more people to manage that resource. So,
yeah, 600 officers and agents in 42 states from Alaska to Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Multiple jurisdictions. Yep. It hasn't changed, but we absolutely couldn't do it alone. And
no way.
Those state and local, the county. Oftentimes, we were the backup for the county deputies, and vice versa.
Yes.
And that type of cooperative law enforcement was, it was just something that we always did. We're very successful in doing that because of those relationships. And,
absolutely critical.
Yeah. And their staffing levels a lot of times were about the same as ours.
Absolutely.
So it was good to lend them a hand, and they would absolutely lend it back as well.
Yes.
Let's tell me about your first kind of, once again, how you got into leadership yourself.
Okay.
I know you didn't mention you had a tennis scholarship. As well,
I did.
But,
played tennis in college. Yes.
Yeah. So where was your first real leadership? Formal or informal? And any kind of specific education on the job? Or?
Well, informally, it's funny you mentioned tennis. Informally, I was often the team captain, both in high school and then again in college. I was the team captain, so learned a lot of leadership skills doing that, leading by example, making sure that we were doing what we were supposed to do. So that was something early on as a leader that I saw. But once I got into Forest Service, honestly, I was just so fortunate, at the time to be able to be placed in a situation where I had awesome leadership. My supervisor at the time, Les Burrell, I mentioned earlier, was the agent on the force, and I worked directly for him. But it wasn't just him. We had a group of experienced law enforcement officers that worked on the Chattahoochee Oconee that guided me, that helped me. And so watching how they led, how they showed up every day, that really helped me formulate my leadership philosophy going forward about, how important it was to communicate and to lead by example. And so that's kind of how I got started in leadership.
Okay. Any formal leadership training?
Yeah. So coming up, that's one thing, with the Forest Service and especially now, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more later about the focus on leadership. But just throughout my career, always look for opportunities to get formal leadership. Like we mentioned earlier, I got my bachelor's in forensic science, and then I got my master's degree in criminal justice because self-learning, I think, is important. I think as a leader, it's incumbent upon you to always try to better yourself and learn new things. And so got my master's degree. And then after that, a couple of the more important and impactful leadership classes that I took was the FBI National Academy. I was fortunate enough to be in 194th class in FBI National Academy. Very proud of that. Great experience. Still to this day, keep in touch with a number of my classmates. Just really a great resource and learned a lot from that. The Forest Service has an excellent senior leader program, which all of our leadership team goes through at some point. Is absolutely critical to helping us understand how the Forest Service leads, and it helps us speak the same language because not all the Forest Service has 38,000 employees, and only about 600 of us are law enforcement. So it's important that we're able to talk the language of them. So that was a big one. I also, the Federal Executive Institute, which you attended as well,
yes.
Was a very good formal leadership class that I think helps you, build relationships and understand how government works in particular. And I thought that was really impactful for me. And then just continuously always looking to learn and taking additional training classes when available. So those are kind of the highlights for me, I would say.
Yeah, and obviously leadership is important to you, not only formal training, but informal training as well. And I know while I was there, we were really, much like a lot of other agencies, and obviously Leadership Institute as well, there is a kind of a gap, especially for early and mid-career law enforcement, opportunities for some formal leadership training. I know we took steps to do that in several situations. And sometimes when there is training, it may not be law enforcement specific training. It's still of value, but there's very, very few law enforcement specific programs, especially for those entry or early on in their career law enforcement officers and agents. Unfortunately, too many times we wait till they're promoted in a formal leadership position and say, okay, it's time to go training and
Right.
trying to flip that on the end. Hey, let's train people up almost from day one.
Absolutely.
With basic students, we actually teach block instructions with basic students here. So
I think that's excellent. And in response to that, you were there when we did a climate assessment within our organization, and one of the gaps that we found was that we were not providing the appropriate amount of leadership to our younger officers and folks who had an aspiration to become a captain or a commander or ASAC or later. And so one thing we've done is we've implemented a Forest Service specific, law enforcement specific leadership training for all members of law enforcement. It's not just for senior leaders, it's for everybody from our administrative assistants to our law enforcement officers to agents to senior leaders. And we all come together and we talk about leadership concepts. And that goes right into my leadership philosophy, which is that, I believe in shared leadership. Talked about the size of the Forest Service, 193 million acres of land spread out across 44 states, essentially. There's no way one individual can lead an organization that big and that spread out. Even our leadership team, which consists of 15 people, there's no way that group can do that either. So it's incumbent upon all of our people to lead from where they are and set the example and be the leader that they want to see. And so we've implemented programs and training specifically designed to help them do that. And I truly believe in it. We're invested in it. We actually have a class coming up in July that will be in Asheville, North Carolina, where we're going to come together and do that. We've had a few classes in the past that's very successful. And it's more than just supervision. This is a leadership class.
Correct, yes.
And to me, those are two completely different things.
Absolutely. Yeah, good. It's great. I'm glad that's continuing on. The importance of leadership at any level.
Absolutely.
Especially what we're asking, or you talk about visiting with some officers here, some new LEOs that are actually completing their training.
Yes.
I think it's probably true, and I'm sure you agree. We are asking them today to do a lot more than what we had to do.
Absolutely right. It's a totally
climate has changed, the community, the people have changed. We're putting a lot on their shoulders, so giving them tools, especially leadership, is extremely important.
It absolutely is. And, we've made a concerted effort as our national law enforcement leadership team to be more engaged with our officers who are at the training center. We had our first graduation class of that size. We had like 24 people that graduated a few months ago. And we had our leadership team meeting here in conjunction with that so we could attend graduation and interact and engage with those folks. Great opportunity to see them. And you're right, the level of training, when I came through, like I said, it was 9 PT. Now it's 7. The land management police training program is 17 weeks. And I think it's one of the better training programs that they have here at FLETC. And really proud of the graduates that we get out of that. They're always well prepared to go begin their field training programs. And really think that's important. But I love having the opportunity to engage with those folks while they're still in class. They're so eager. It actually energizes me and makes me want to go back and do better for them to make sure they have the resources they need to be successful. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, we often say in leadership, leadership is obviously a people skill. It's also a contact sport.
It is.
It is hard to lead people from Washington, D.C.
It is.
A Teams call, phone call, emails, and getting out there. I mean, law enforcement officers just graduating FLETC have met the director of an organization and other various level, mid and high level leadership.
Right.
I think flattening that down is huge. I think it shows that as leaders we care about the people. We're just not there to get the mission done. So that's huge. And obviously there's other agencies that do that as well. But Forest Service, not just law enforcement, always very very good about doing that. Try to flatten that chain down as much as we can and access, and that's a huge thing. Now, one thing you mentioned, and maybe we can expand a little bit more on this. Obviously, Forest Service law enforcement is a small component within a much larger, 36, 37, 38,000 employees in the U.S. Forest Service, which is part of a larger USDA.
Right.
And really, law enforcement investigation has the biggest law enforcement role there. But in order to get your job done or the law enforcement investigations a mission done, we absolutely have to depend on the rest of the people.
Absolutely.
And you, as the director, and one of the things I would say I found difficult, but it kind of eye-opening when I went to D.C. is, you have to influence, you have to do so much, interact, rely on, partner with all these non-law enforcement staff areas, and sometimes, we may speak a little different language. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
our cops' priorities are sometimes different than
Yes.
everybody else. And you've been up there for quite a time,
Mm-hmm.
and I will say Tracy is known to. He knows everybody and anybody. He is absolute a great influencer, great at building bridges and relationships. Obviously, that's a key leadership skill. But what have you found to be, either difficult things where you really kind of had to stretch to, try to get that law enforcement mission first, or
Mm-hmm.
when you tried to get law enforcement and it was just that was not a priority for
Right.
the agency, and sometimes we got put on the back burner. And
Right.
how did you deal with it, not only personally but organization wise, when sometimes like, wow, we didn't get what we needed?
Right. Well,
Long question. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Part of our vision statement within Forest Service law enforcement, is to be that starts off to be an integral part of the Forest Service, and you have to make sure that you're being of value to the other parts of the other components of the organization. Our line officers are responsible for managing all of these vast lands, and our role, from my perspective, is to make sure they have the skills available to them to be able to be successful in managing that land. So we partner with them and make sure that, even at the ground level, at the LEOs, I expect them to engage with the district rangers, the captains to engage with the forest supervisors, the special agents in charge to engage with the regional foresters, and I spend a lot of time engaged with our executive leadership team, the chief, the associate chief, making sure that we're in alignment, because our priorities should be their priorities and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And if we're not aligned, then we need to sit down and talk to make sure that we get alignment. And so I do spend a lot of time, educating them with regard to the things that are important to us and why we need to do things a certain way. But I also listen to understand and make sure that I'm focusing our organization and setting our priorities in a way that supports the overall, not only Forest Service, but USDA mission, to deliver benefits to the public. And so all that is absolutely critical. We were talking about relationships there from my perspective. Internal relationships within the Forest Service, within USDA, within the federal government is important, but external relationships too. You talked about that earlier. I spend a significant amount of time working with our state and local and federal partners, building those relationships. I meet weekly with my counterparts at the Department of Interior. We have a call, and because we have so many similar issues and challenges, and we find that we bounce things off of each other, and it's very effective, and it's a great way for us to be supportive of each other. But at the local level, as you well know, I spent a lot of time with the Western State Sheriff's Association, the National Sheriff's Association, and other partner agencies, making sure that how can we best help them be successful, and vice versa. And we've developed memorandums of understanding with those agencies to talk about how we collaborate and work together. And I think that just makes it, when things are tough and you've got those relationships already built, it makes things go a lot better. So internally and externally, very important.
Yeah, extremely, extremely important. And one of our obviously in leadership, we talk about a lot of different areas, but we actually hit on or we teach a little bit on wellness. For the leader themselves, also for them to be aware of the wellness or resilience of the people we are leading, and we also use model the way. I mean, you got to show up, and you talk the talk. You need to walk the walk as well. And I know you have been for years and years a very strong supporter. For years we always talked about physical fitness was the wellness for law enforcement. Well, we've learned quite a bit. There's a lot more than that. It's mental, it's spiritual. I mean, there are a lot of components there, and it is readily apparent that for a lot of years, we weren't paying probably as much attention to that as. And I know there's been a lot of changes, obviously a lot of focus on, and this isn't just a Forest Service law enforcement issue, larger law enforcement issue, and the Forest Service is also dealing with that. So you talked about the new LEOs just getting ready to graduate. I suspect they will have different opportunities and tools and services and
things that we didn't even think of.
Yeah. Hey, it's okay if you're having some trouble. Here's some help. So I don't know, you want to about wellness or any type of specific resilience program or something?
Thanks for bringing that up, because that is absolutely critical. As we all know, right now is one of the most difficult times in law enforcement. After I've been in law enforcement for almost 34 years. And it's one of the most challenging times we've ever faced. The scrutiny on law enforcement is greater than it's ever been. There's, expectations that we're going to modify the way that we police. And with that, for the officers, comes stress. When, you've constantly got, deal with, cameras that are there, and people questioning decisions that you have to make in a split moment. It makes it very stressful for folks. And it was already inherently stressful before that. So as a result of that, not like you said, not just the Forest Service, but many agencies are moving forward with placing more focus on the overall well-being of our officers. We recently hired a fitness and well-being coordinator position here at FLETC that works for our Assistant Director for Training, Development, and Standards. And that person is a national resource to help put people in touch with the appropriate counseling if necessary, providing all kinds of training opportunities. We do a bunch of seminars. It's awesome. We have annually, we have our annual law enforcement refresher trainings in each region, and Adam Hill is his name. He works here at FLETC. Adam has been bringing in resources to help provide those folks with with knowledge about different resources that are available if you're feeling stressed. If and it's not just about things that happen on the job. Things happen in your personal life that can absolutely influence how you perform your duties, as well as how you interact with your family at home. And we want to, protect the whole individual, and very focused on that. My partners at DOI, we talk about that all the time. We share resources. The Forest Service Fire Organization is also bought in, and our Work Environment and Performance Office is also bought in to help us, consolidate resources and figure out the best way to do this. And one thing we found, the Forest Service has always had some level, I think, of help, as it relates to support. But we found that, first responders, particularly us and our firefighters, there's just a different need, there. And we need to expand our resources and find people who specialize in those kinds of traumas and things that we experience on a regular basis. And it's been great to share resources and figure out ways to put the right people in front of our people to help them, be well. Yeah. And so that's something I really am appreciative of, and looking forward to continuing to develop that program.
Yeah. And, leadership skills are life skills,
Yes.
talk about that, and wellness. Oftentimes, especially early on when I came into law enforcement, you leave law enforcement work on the job, and you leave your personal life at home before you come work. Yeah. Well, we know that's not true. That's really not possible. But there are a lot of us still out there that were raised in that culture. And it's hard to shift the culture.
It is.
The new people coming on, I believe they're getting, hey, obviously my health and wellness is important. And, oh, good, we have resources. But when me and you came on, it was like, if you were having issues, you were either weak,
right?
Couldn't take it. Yep. We medicated by going to the bar or other type of self-destructive behavior. Right. And I'm not saying that still goes on all over the place out there, but there has been a pretty good start of a culture shift within law enforcement that, hey, it's okay to say I'm having a bad day. Not as okay, it's expected, and it's actually healthier,
right?
Doing that. So changing that narrative, and again, we start to try to do it here at FLETC as well, and many other agencies, not just the Forest Service. In some ways, the Forest Service is kind of in the forefront, but that's extremely important.
And we try to model that behavior. One of the things when I go out, I try to be vulnerable. I try to talk about, if I may have issues or concerns, I want to be able to share it. We've had high-level folks within our organization share their journey with regard to mental health and getting help and getting assistance. And I think that goes so far in setting the example that if we have folks in senior leadership that are comfortable expressing their concerns about their mental health and what they need to be whole, then anybody should be able to feel comfortable. Obviously, there was no ramifications from a career perspective. That person got the help they needed. They're still a dynamic and wonderful leader. And in fact, this probably, in my opinion, makes them an even better leader, that they're able to share those concerns. But the goal is to let people know that it's okay to ask for help, that it's not a sign of weakness. Like you said, that's how we kind of grew up. You just kind of sucked it up and, held it inside. And at some point, your cup can only hold so much water. And at some point, if you don't take care of that and get that water level lowered, it's going to overflow. And so our goal is to try to, when you start getting close to the top, to do some things to reduce that so that people don't feel that stress.
Yeah, absolutely. We also, as a leader, we like to say an empty well gives no water. So if you're not modeling the way and doing your best to be healthy, resilient, practicing that type of wellness, and I mean, leader's not doing it, obviously the people you are leading are not going to do it as well. So a little bit kind of a shift here. We talked a little bit earlier about this. So recruiting is a big issue nationwide in law enforcement.
Yes.
I think everybody knows the reason why. Like any other agency, we struggle oftentimes.
Sure.
But we do have positions across the United States in a variety of different locales. Some are a little easier to recruit for, some are not. So if you can tell us a little about I guess generally law enforcement recruiting. Obviously, we have some gaps, some area. Attracting women in law enforcement is one of any initiatives you're working on, or us, and I know we have close ties with some of our other agencies as well. How we're trying to bridge those gaps and getting a diverse organization, not just at multiple different levels, and how important recruiting is for that.
Right. Yeah, recruiting. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a challenge, but it's one that I enjoy. Looking at recruiting, I came in, as I talked about, as a co-op student. That has morphed into a number of different things. We had other names for it. It's now called the Pathways Program, and where we have folks that are starting college, and we bring them on for work periods, and then upon graduation, we convert them to full-time with law enforcement. That program has continued to grow for the Forest Service and for law enforcement in particular, and we've had a lot of success. We have here at FTSE also our field training and evaluation program / recruitment coordinator, a guy by the name of Brandon Robinson, who does a phenomenal job. We have a class right now here that graduates next week of about 9 pathway students who recently graduated college and will go into their first duty locations here shortly. All are very impressive individuals. And you mentioned diversity. There's a wide, diverse candidate pool, which is something, quite frankly, that the Forest Service struggled with at one point. We're a rural organization, and quite frankly, not a lot of minorities knew about some of the opportunities with the Forest Service, and so there just wasn't a lot. And so we've done I think a much better job of letting people know what opportunities exist. We've done some focused recruiting, and it has changed the dynamic of our workforce to some degree. But you put all that in there, but then the other aspects of recruiting is obviously, with some of the national issues that have gone on in policing and the expectations of change within the culture of policing, there's been a focus on making sure that we're bringing the right people into the organization. So talk about a challenge. You got a situation where you're putting more scrutiny on the people you bring into the organization, but you're also looking for specific things to increase the reach of your organization too. And so, it's really competitive. You have to be really good at selling your program. There's tons of, I think how many federal agencies train down here? 80 something, 90?
There's 120 partners, 110 something.
Wow.
Quite a few.
Right. So we're all essentially in some ways searching for that same individual. And so what makes the Forest Service special? We have to sell the things that are attractive to our organization. And I enjoy that part of it. I mean, I think, I would put our organization up against anyone as far as professionalism, satisfaction of work, joy. I mean, just the things that you can do. There are no 2 days are alike in the Forest Service law enforcement. One day you might be doing an outfitter guide case. The next day you're doing an arson case. The next day you're doing an archaeological resources protection case. And the list goes on. You might be hunting for a fugitive. You might be doing marijuana, eradication. So it's really a dynamic job with a lot of opportunities, and it's not a hard sell. I mean, we work in some of the most beautiful areas of the country. So from that perspective, we're competitive. But again, I enjoy that challenge of going out trying to find the right people with the right fit, and then seeing the joy when you go out to talk to them later and say, man, I'm so glad I got an opportunity to do this. I didn't even know this opportunity existed. Thank you. And just seeing those folks thrive, that's for me, that's what it's all about. But recruiting in this environment for law enforcement, I think most, not only federal, but state and local agencies as well, are having challenges bringing in recruiting as fast as they're losing people. And so how do we make it attractive and make people want to come work for us? And that's something, fortunately, again, we have a good recruiting program. We have, I think, something attractive to sell in the nature of the work that we do. And I think we'll continue to be successful, but it is a challenge.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I know you mentioned one person. I think, or I probably know what was a mentor to you, but Tracy Perry didn't get there by
No,
himself.
he did
None
not.
of us, none of us
Absolutely.
do. So obviously, you don't have to use names unless
Yeah,
you want to. But
sure,
we've all had mentors out
Yeah.
there, and we just talked about hiring on new
Oh, yeah.
LEOs. Obviously, how important has that been for you? I know you mentor people as well.
Crucial.
And how important is us to make sure that we are mentoring at all levels?
Absolutely crucial. I've had a number of mentors throughout my Forest Service career, both internal to Forest Service law enforcement and external. I talked about Les, who hired me into the organization, and we're still close to this day. In fact, he's here teaching in the international programs group this week. But also, when I left Les's supervision to go work for a guy by the name of Glenn Thomas on the George Washington National Forest, he was another great mentor for me. Les and Glenn were very different. Les was much more of a catch the bad guy. We were focused on, somebody's doing something wrong, you find them and you make sure they're held accountable for that. Glenn was much more of a program builder, a program manager. And so I learned a lot of the aspects about how to manage a program, how to do those kinds of things from him. And then I was fortunate enough when I went to Atlanta to work for a guy by the name of Jack Gregory, who is famous within Forest Service law enforcement for sure. In fact, the vast majority of the policy that we have today was probably written by Jack. He was, did a lot of great things to help move the organization forward, and was really a great, example and supervisor as it relates to building a program and understanding what needed to be done to move the program forward. So he was a big influence on me. And then, you go into the DC and things like that, had the opportunity to work with some wonderful chiefs, and they've helped guide me and put me in position to be successful. So just a number of great mentors along the way. And again, I try to keep in touch with the ones that are still around to help me, make decisions when I have questions and things like that. And then, as you mentioned, I think it's absolutely important to give back. When we developed the Pathways program, and before that, it was the Student Career Enhancement program, I helped write policy for that program to make sure that we were providing that opportunity for the younger officers to have somebody that they could call upon that wasn't in their supervisory chain of command, but could give them a career advice and help them make good decisions. And so I still do that. I look forward to, reaching out to those folks and talking to them and seeing how they're doing. And, I think that's so important. And even when I retire someday, I will definitely continue to do that and be a resource available, because I think that's something I want to give back because it was given to me, and I want to do that too.
Yeah, extremely important. I probably know the answer, but how about you talked about law enforcement mentors. Mm-hmm. How important is it to have people outside of law enforcement getting that different perspective and different view to rely on, whether it's a family member, a coworker outside of law enforcement? And I know you have several.
Yes.
And you are that
yes.
to several people. So
absolutely. I think, like I said, I mentioned several of the chiefs that I've worked with. I had the opportunity to work with and admire, Chief Tidwell. Tom Tidwell was my first boss when I became director, and Vicki Christensen was an awesome boss, as his chief more now. And I can always talk to them. And I spent a lot of time talking with our associate chief, Angela Coleman. I work with her on a day-to-day basis, as you did well.
Yes.
She still gets mad at me because I let Chris retire, but I really can depend upon them. They're great resources for me to bounce things off of. Another great mentor is a guy by the name of Greg Smith. And Greg was at the time when you were there, he was our director of lands. He's now our associate deputy chief for National Forest System. Just a great person to bounce things off of. Really, especially when it comes to dealing with difficult situations, employees and things like that. Greg is a resolving official, as am I, to help when there are challenges, the agency, to help them resolve conflict. And I've learned a lot from him in that arena as well. So absolutely imperative. And just even in the community, there are, folks that you admire and you look to say, that's somebody that I can learn from. And I try my best to read a lot and learn from leaders from that way as well.
Okay. Yeah. Little different subject here. Leading through adversity. Obviously, you and I went through some tough things.
Yes.
Huge budget cuts. COVID. I hate to say we got good at it because it's hard to get good at anything like that. But what kind of takeaways or skills, and we know it's going to happen again. What kind of skills did you rely on? Again, trying to lead from distance from
Right.
DC and influencing people very
Right.
far away. When a lot of people were out of the office, or during budget issues, morale issues, or lowering morale, or serious accidents or incidents. What kind of? Because I have seen you in action several times, and the courses you take are spot on, and honestly just make people feel better. So
Yeah. Chris, the probably the most important thing as it relates to that for me leading through crisis is be authentic, be genuine, be yourself. You can't fake it in times like that. People are going to see through that a mile away. And, obviously you want to have empathy, but if that's just not your natural, go-to, lean on the things that you're good at,
Right.
and surround yourself with people who have the skills that you're lacking in times of crisis. I try my best, to build bridges before something bad happens.
Absolutely.
So, I think it's important, like when we go to our annual law enforcement refresher trainings, to meet as many of the law enforcement personnel as we have, so that they get to know me as an individual, spending time, not just, talking to them from the lectern, but getting down, having lunch with them, going to dinner, just having conversations, learning about their aspirations, getting to know them as individuals. So those things to me, are absolutely critical. So when something goes bad, you have a relationship. It's a lot better to deal with things and easier when you have that relationship previously built. That goes with working with partners as well. Talking about relationship with the Western States Sheriff's Association, that started out as a little bit of a challenging relationship. I think they would be the first to tell you that. But now we have a wonderful relationship. And, I am just so happy and proud of the relationship we built over the years. We're true partners. We have each other's best interests at heart, and we want to do everything we can to make each other successful. But those relationships were built, before things went bad, and so now if something goes wrong, I'm very confident that we have the ability to navigate it because we have a built-in relationship. So genuine, authentic, surrounding yourself with people who are, good at the things you're not. Those are the things I think are key.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I know that's the case. It's kind of a throwback. 33 years. If you can look back, is there anything you do differently, or say, man, I shouldn't have done that, or man, I'd like to do a do-over? And if there's not, that's fine. But
I probably would have just stayed as an agent on the George Washington.
Yeah, I had that same. I had that same.
No. Honestly, no. I mean, from a career perspective, things happen in their own time for a reason. There were times when, as a young person, you're thinking, oh, this is not happening fast enough, or things like that. But then looking back, it's like, I'm so glad I spent as much time, because when I first started in uniform, I'm thinking, oh, I want to be an agent.
Right.
But I'm so glad that I spent the time in uniform learning that job and getting an appreciation for what it took to be successful in that role, because that helped me be a much better agent down the road. And same when I became an agent, although that was a job I thought I was going to stay in forever. I did it long enough to learn, what was important. So when I got to the next level of the organization, I had a good understanding of what it took to be successful as an agent. And so, just moving along that chain that way, to me, I think that's just how it goes. And all the way up to the director. I don't think I would do anything different. I had opportunities to go out west, probably as a special agent in charge at one point. Maybe just to give myself an opportunity to see a different part of the country. But honestly, had I done that, I may have never ended up in DC where I'm at. So I don't have any regrets. I mean, I've had a wonderful, wonderful career, and wouldn't change it. I am very happy with it.
Okay, yeah. One other quick one for you. Any advice you want to give to either, we talked about recruiting and the new people we're looking for, either people get right into law enforcement right now, or those people at that level, hey, I think I want to step up into a leadership role. They say, hey, maybe another one, hey, I wish I would have known this, or I wish I would have done this, or just some general advice to go where they want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And two things. One is don't rush yourself. Again, I talked about the fact that I thought that I wanted to go do these things before I was probably ready. Take your time and learn that skill where you are. But understand and look out. There are so many opportunities. Don't be afraid to be mobile, especially within the Forest Service. In order to advance in our job, oftentimes you have to go to different geographic locations. I mean, it's not, one officer might be responsible for, 500,000 to 1,000,000 acres, depending on when they are. So, if there's one person there, you're not going to be in that location. So you need to look at other places. So, be willing to step outside your comfort zone. A lot of times people are a lot more ready than they realize to step up. For me, leadership is not about how old you are, how long you've done something. It's about what skills will you bring to the table when you get there. There's a lot of young people that are just born natural leaders that will be successful. They know how to engage and interact with people. They have the right empathy. They have the right, mentality to be successful. And they shouldn't just think, well, I need to, I'm not competitive because I haven't done it long enough. Give yourself an opportunity. Stretch yourself, put yourself in an uncomfortable position because that'll help you grow. So those are the kind of things, one of the things I talk about at Alert all the time is, hey, we've got a ton of patrol captain vacancies. We've got a ton of assistant special agent in charge vacancies. Consider those opportunities. It may not be in California. It might be in Georgia. It might be in Milwaukee. But think about some of these other opportunities. It might be in a very remote location in a village in Africa, in Alaska. And so you just never know, so be open, take an opportunity because this life is not very long and 33 years will go by before you know it.
Absolutely.
Give yourself an opportunity to experience things because you'll be glad you did. And that breadth of experience will serve you well when you're sitting in this chair. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've asked you several questions. We talked about quite a few diverse, different areas. Mm-hmm. Anything I missed? Anything say, hey, I really would like to talk a little bit about this. And I know we're getting pretty close to time here, but I want to give the opportunity. It's like, oh man, I really wanted to hit on this thing.
No, I think you did a great job of covering, the things that I wanted to talk about. I think, again, for me, recognizing the time, recognizing where we are in law enforcement, that we're kind of at a point where there's an expectation that American policing is going to shift and change. Yeah. And I think we have the leadership, federally, state, and local to meet that challenge. I think we have people that are embracing some of the, seeing some of the things as a challenge. Some of it is, it's going to be difficult, but I think we can get there. And it's important that we as leaders step up and lead from the front through these challenges. We can't sit back and watch people and expect things to change. We have to be the change agents to help people see that there is a different way we can be successful. It might look a little different, but we still can get the job done. And I'm looking forward, to leading through some of these challenges as we move forward. I think, I'm very proud of the leadership team we have within the Forest Service. I think we have the right leadership folks with the right mentality that are doing some wondrous things that I never even thought about. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and you will be successful. And that's what I try to do. That's probably, that actually made me think of, that's probably the one nugget that I would always say is really, really spend a significant amount of time when you're selecting people for jobs, particularly leadership roles. Make sure that you're putting the right people with the right skill set and the right mentality who share your values in those roles, because when you do that, it makes the organization better. You don't want to hire clones of yourself. You want to hire people who have different skill sets and bring different ideas and thought to the table. But you want to have people who share your core values, honor, courage, and commitment. Those are core values for Forest Service law enforcement. And those are the kind of leaders that we want to bring into our organization. So absolutely do that. Hire the right people, and you're going to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually probably a very, very good ending point. And Tracy, I'd like to say I greatly appreciate you coming down
Always
here
good to see you,
and
my
doing
friend.
this and sharing your wisdom and experience. And the audience for these are, they could be brand new basic law enforcement students to senior leaders. So I think what you talked about, we've hit a variety of different areas, and but almost 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 55 minutes went by pretty quickly.
Very quickly.
Thank you once again for doing this. Any quick closing comments or anything before I?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to have the conversation and the dialogue. I really enjoyed it, and look forward to doing things like this again with you in the future.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah. Once again, this is Chris Bohm, and thank you very much, Tracy, for doing this. We're not exactly sure when this will actually get out, but when you do see this, there's several other leadership series. So tune into those, watch those, and tell others about it. So thank you very much for watching this. And Tracy, thank you again. And everyone be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.